Hello Steelers, and welcome to this tutorial video where I'm going to be showing you how I made these ruined buildings for the First World War. These are 15mm in scale, but of course can be used for any theatre or period of time really. However, I wanted to create some terrain pieces that look like the smashed up villages of northern France that were fought over during the First World War. Due to artillery, these were reduced to little more than brick smears, but there will be enough remaining walls and structure just to show where the original buildings stood. This painting is an example from Pozieres in 1916 during the fighting on the Somme, and this is the kind of look that I was going for. I used 2mm thick plasticard for the base of the houses, and you can get this in A4 sizes. But be warned, it's not cheap, but it doesn't warp either, so it's perfect for my needs. I got this from eBay, and I'll put links in the description below for all the materials that I used in this build. Using some ruined wall pieces that I bought from Ironclad Miniatures, I laid out where I wanted the exterior and interior walls to go. Putting interior walls in will add to the illusion of this being an actual structure prior to bombardment, and it also gives it a little bit of a story. I marked in their locations with a pen and also numbered them on the base. This then gave me the basic size of the footprint of the building, and I marked out the area I wanted to cut the plasticard to. I wanted to use these in Peter Pig's square bashing, which uses 6-inch grids, so I kept that in mind as well when I was measuring the size of the building. Next, I clipped the corners down and smoothed them off with a file, just to get rid of that square shape and to make the piece blend more with the tabletop than having a sharp corner. Then I realised that I'd been a silly Billy and I'd forgotten to take off the covering of the plasticard, meaning I lost my original positioning of the ruined walls. Always remember, piss poor performance is preceded by piss poor preparation. However, I could remember where the pieces were because I'd numbered them, and I used super glue to hold them into their final positions. There was a tiny bit of overhang on one of the ruins, so I just filed that away to make it flush with the base. You'll notice here that I also glued the upper floor pieces to the base, as I didn't want to use them where they were supposed to be, but I wanted to use the rubble on them as part of the floor surface. Waste not, want not. The next stage is to add polyfiller to the base and cover the entire area between the walls to give me a surface to work off. You can score the plasticard here to make this adhere easier, but I didn't bother, and I've never had an issue with breakages anyway. This is called spackle in the US, but it's basically wood filler if you're wondering. I use a flat-headed screwdriver to get the filler down. Don't worry about it being neat or tidy or even, as this will add to the later stages anyway. I would then suggest leaving the piece to dry overnight for at least 24 hours to make sure the filler has completely set solid. And once it has, it's time to give the model some texture. And for this I use an undiluted PVA glue and a large brush to cover the filler as much as possible, and also to seal any joins between the ruined walls and the filler. I then pour silver sand over the top. This is a very thin sand, but it creates a rough texture across the model. You could use texturing paste instead in these two steps, but it is quite costly and you'll use a lot of it anyway. This is your cheapest option, even though it takes a little longer. Ensure that you get all the loose sand off the model with a big dry brush, as some may have collected in the corners. Then let the sand and PVA dry. It might not take all night, but I'd certainly leave it for 24 hours just to be sure. With that dry, I then apply more PVA to the model, in the areas where I want bigger lumps of masonry and rubble. This is easily created by pouring some railway modeller's ballast over the piece so that it will stick to the PVA. Once you've done this, it's best practice to hold this in place by using watered down PVA. I use a dropper bottle to add this over the ballast. If you have a spray bottle, use that will work, but I don't. This, when it is dry, will seal the layer of rubble in place, and it'll make it better for gaming with. So once again, leave this dry for another 24 hours to ensure that it is completely solid. Then it's time to start painting the model. I begin with burnt umber acrylic. This is a big tube of cheap paint that I got from a cheap craft suppliers, and it works perfectly for this job. Go over the entire model. Water down the acrylic if you need to, but use a big brush and try to get good coverage. Go over it twice if you need to. This is going to give us our base colour for the rest of the model. Once this base colour is dry, I use fawn acrylic to dry brush across the entire building. This is easily done. You load up your brush and then you wipe off as much as possible with a cloth or kitchen towel, so you have only a small amount left. Then, gently using a wiping motion, go across the entire model, leaving paint in the raised areas. Start gently and work up, as it's easier to add more paint than it is to take it away. This is also going to help to bring out any details you want to paint later, as well as emphasising that base colour. Then it's time to begin painting the bricks. So this is the upstanding walls and any of the larger areas of rubble made by the ballast in the centre areas. You can get this on quickly with a big brush, as being messy here doesn't matter, because it could quite easily just be brick dust as well as the large lumps anyway. I do leave some of the base colour showing through though, just to give the model a bit of interest and contrast. Then we're back to dry brushing, but this time I'm using Vallejo's German Orange. Using the same technique of loading the brush and wiping off the excess, I go over the brickwork. This will pick out individual bricks on the walls and highlight the rubble as well. It is just giving you a bit of definition and also depth to the damage. Next thing to do is start working on the detailing. This includes the plaster remnants on the walls, the windows and door sills and frames, and any other bits and pieces that are included in the original wall pieces. I use a variety of colours as houses are decorated in a variety of colours. That said, I don't do anything too bright, as I don't want these to be much of a distraction, but just something that adds to the overall look of the model. Once this is dry, I will apply some Agrax Earthshade by Citadel Miniatures just to dull these areas down. This is going to reduce the clean look, and it's a very basic weathering technique. I also use Agrax to create streaks on the upstanding walls, and even patches here and there on the rubble to break things up and just give it a bit of a mixed look. Once the Agrax is dried, I go back over the model with a final dry brush of fawn just to bring everything together and create an impression of it being a single piece that is also covered in dust and debris. Finally, I seal the model with matte spray varnish. This is going to protect the paintwork during games, and it also gives the model a matte finish and it will tie everything together. Now this is the final stage, and it isn't really required, but I did it as I wanted a little extra to finish things off. I have a rubble mix that I made myself years ago. Unfortunately, I can't exactly remember what I put in or even how I made it, so I'm not looking forward to the day that it runs out. But I use PVA glue painted onto the areas that I might want to add rubble, and I pour the larger lumps over the piece. Once they are in the place that I want them, I also sprinkle my rubble dust mix over this to get into all the nooks and crannies and make sure the rubble pieces don't stand out too much. Then finally, like the ballast, I use a dropper with watered down PVA glue to go over and seal everything in place. And this is it, the model is completed. It takes a while since drying times can be slow, but each stage only took a few minutes to do, and you can work on several at a time whilst working on other projects, just going back to these buildings once a day. I'm pleased with how they turned out, and I think they'll be a good addition to any First World War tabletop. So, thanks for watching. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do. Also, you can help the channel out by subscribing to my Patreon or channel memberships, where you will get ad-free early access videos.